other generations of itself, happened on day 3, lining up with the Memnun. Then day 4, he put sun, moon, and stars. The sun to rule the day. There's some contention of whether it's the moon or the stars. To rule the night, that's another story. But nevertheless, it's principalities in their phases, in their places. Like trees planted around, okay, so you grow where you're planted. So he says, I'm the vine, you're the branches. So here's a picture of the menorah with branches here and there, and our job is to bear fruit. We didn't design where we are on the vine. He did, and he put us there in time and place, and said, now your job is to just allow the sap, the ruach to flow through you, and you are to then manifest fruit. So, as a picture of the psalmic, that lines up with like this watchtower, and he talks about that he placed people as stewards over his vineyard, and some did a good job and some did a bad job. So the stewardship now is parallel themes. I'm just blending them all together. Parallel themes is to say how we do the job he gave us to do is what psalmic is all about. Well, ayin is an eyeball, which speaks of judgment or weighing and balancing. It also looks like a fruit with a seed in and of itself. So the fruit that's born from us doing our job as psalmic is now going to be evaluated and tested and seen whether it's fit and proper or if there's something wrong. Like you said, if there's some bad notes going on. How do you determine? Well, Alfonso's work is finding out if something's not working properly. How do we make an adjustment of energy flow or of processing words or thinking or speaking? If we're out of whack, ooh, too bad for you, you're a bad branch. No, it can be repaired, it can be realigned, it can be put back to put out good fruit. How do you know if the branch is out of whack? Look at the fruit. How do you know their heart? Look at the fruit. So there's something about looking at the fruit, the ayin, which goes back and registers how we are the psalmic. And Yeshua said more than once, if you're a bad branch and you don't bear good fruit, you're going to be whacked off and thrown into the fire. So just because you've processed all that doesn't even mean you're safe and in the clear. There's the constant evaluation going on. You look at the fruit, you tend the branch, which is what his job is to help us bear better fruit. And it's like, I can't help it. My head is all whacked out and I'm grouchy. It's not that I'm a big stupid jerk. I'm just grouchy because I've got this thing. So he says, oh, here, let's help this thing. Okay, now you don't have to be grouchy. Don't look for excuses to be a jerk. The way it all plays back in. Because the next letter is the mouth, the pei, which lines up with Sukkot, which is the fellowship we all have together, where all the branches are helping each other. So psalmic ayin pei as one unit lines up with Micah 6:8. He has shown you man what is good, and Elohim requires of you. Do justly. That's the psalmic, doing the right thing. Love mercy. That's help each other, tend each other, watch each other, and help correct each other. And pei, walk humbly with your Elohim. How do you walk humbly with your Elohim? By quit being a jerk to each other, right? Yeshua said, what are the 2 commandments? Love Yahweh with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. And James goes on to say, don't say you love Yahweh and act like a big stupid jerk to your neighbor, because one's the expression of the other. These all work together.
You said it lined up with Sukkot. How does it line up with
Sukkot, okay, here's the festivals.
Yeah,
Pesach, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and then Shemini Atzeret. So Sukkot is the fellowship where we all get together, take a week off, commanded gatherings are the first day of the last day, and then pei is a mouth. It lines up with the altar of incense, the prayers of the saints. So what's mouth stuff? Singing, talking, laughing, eating, praying, rejoicing. The commandment for Sukkot was ak sameach, which means only rejoice. So rejoicing has to do with the mouth. Now we were talking about Psalms 119, that the mouth also had to do with orientation, nose, character, and what was the word? Only? No, what was that word? Also. Also. What does also have to do with it? Well, that brings us back to Psalm 119. My point is, Sukkot has to do with the collective. Also means you, also you, also you, and so there's this pulling together having to do with the pei, and then expressing. So if we're scattered around, and okay, here we are scattered around the earth, and he says, come back once a year and get together. And you go, I'm too busy for that. Well, he talked about this gathering of the wedding, and the guys were too busy, so they didn't come, and he slammed the door on them, and it's like, is that a picture of Sukkot? Mm-hmm. Now, I know the Mormons have a concept such as this, so I don't know the details of it. In the by and by, we're not necessarily all going to be camped out on one piece of ground like we are now, but perhaps we'll be inhabiting stellar systems all across the universe. Now imagine how much fun it would be if you're out on Andromeda and I'm out here in the middle of the Horsehead Nebula, and Yahweh says, hey, once a year, let's get back to have a party. Hey, how's it been going out there? And it's like, man, we're scattered across the universe coming back to tell stories and talk about stuff, and that would be great to get together every year if you extend it into this eternal dimension. But he's doing the same thing in this little thing and say, listen, get together once a year and quit working. In fact, he said, store up your tithe so that when you come for this time of the year, you can spend it on anything you want. Blow the wad, spend the whole thing, buy anything, share it with each other. And once every 3 years, instead of going to Jerusalem, stay home and spend it on the widows and orphans and Levites that are amongst you, so that even though they don't have anything to maybe come back to this one place with, once every 3 years you can have a party where you live, and you don't have to pack everything up and travel. This is his idea of a good time. Imagine that. Shemini Atzeret lines up with this Zadi, which actually, there's so much more to all this. Again, I'm trying to hit some high points. But the word Shemini is 8. The figure 8, the Arabic numeral, if you turn it sideways, it's the mathematical symbol of infinity. So there's something about Shemini Atzeret that is not just, okay, that's the end. It's like, no, it's a sprout. Zadi is a sprout. So this isn't the end. This is the end of this realm, but it's just the tip of the sprout of what he has planned for internal, infinite, beyond your wildest imagination. So he's just trying to find people who would qualify themselves by their desire to be his people and by their desire to learn his ways, take it to heart, and do what he said, so that when this realm is over, they can go on to the next, and he has proved them, tested them, trained them. Amen. The word Aleph Mem Nun, amen, literally means not only so be it, but it means a trained, skilled artisan who you can trust because he has the fidelity and proven himself to be trustworthy. But we just say it means faith. Abraham had faith, so he attributed to him as righteousness. Abraham did what he was told, went out and separated the stars as a trained specialist and expert at his job. That's not faith doing nothing. That's faith doing exactly what you were told. So if Abraham is the father of our faith, instead of the Christian model that says that means we don't do anything because Christ did it all for us, it's like, no, Abraham was told to do something, separate the stars, count the stars. The word sefer means connect the dots, string all these things together. What we're doing with the alphabet, connecting these little individual pieces, is literally sefering. If you look at the stars and their little dots, and the imaginary lines connecting them, forming constellations, is a description of what Abraham would have done if he was actually faithful to sefer the stars as he was told. But we're told, well, nobody can count the stars, so Abraham did nothing. Well, that's not being faithful. That's looking for a cop-out. Faithfulness would be to say, oh, I was told to sefer the stars. Guess what? I'm going to sefer the stars. So I'm going to stay awake all night, sleep during the day because it's a hot desert or whatever. But I'm going to stay up all night looking at the stars and sefer them. And Abraham was found to be faithful, trustworthy to do what he was told to do. That's what the word amen means. Aleph Mem Nun. The point is, we do this because he entered into the heart of the earth, making it all possible for us to contain everything of his kingdom that he came down here to buy for us, to provide for us, to bring us back, to pay for the debts which had alienated us from all this stuff that was ours. Because we threw ourselves out of it. We, like in hockey, right? you foul out, so you're out of the game and you have to sit in the penalty booth. So we were sitting in the penalty booth. And he came down here to buy us back by paying for the penalty and beating up our jailers and rescuing us to say, now, here, get back in the game. It's very interesting. It's kind of like this little kid's game called freeze tag, right? There's one guy who's the devil, it, and everybody else, ha ha, they want to run around, and when he tags you, boom, oh, I can't move my shoulder, or ooh, the cops busted me, I did something stupid, or oh, I'm in debt, I can't move, I can't play anymore, I'm just frozen. The circumstances of it got me frozen. Now, all the other people running around have this incredible power of touch. And if I can touch the one frozen and say, Yahweh Rafka, Yahweh heal you, restore you, boom, instantly you can run and play again. Until the devil or the adversary or the it comes and touches you again. And if the it can freeze everybody, then he wins. But as long as there's somebody who's not frozen because they have the Chaim et Ha'olam within them, they can touch one another and restore them to life. That's the picture of what Yeshua came to do. To touch us with the Chaim of Yahweh and restore us back to life instead of being frozen. But he had to come down here and submit himself to the game. Risking failure. But Yod Kav Lamed, he prevailed, containing everything.
Amen.
To reach in and pull us back so that we could resurrect. Anyway, we can go layer upon layer, more and more deep. But what I'm saying is, the whole story is right in here. The entire story. Who we are, what happened to us, how we get back, and what's in front of us. And him providing Yeshua as the vehicle to make it happen is all right here. But the heart of the matter, right in the very center, Kav Lamed represents the Torah. We have to regard the terms of this Torah, which is exactly what we were talking about with Psalm 119 when you walked in. Where, well, hey, do you want to describe? He's filming. Do you want to describe what we were looking at 119? Do you guys want to take another little break here or something? Or where are we at?
We never break.
You might need a breath.
I'm okay, but I don't want to just go blah, blah, blah. If people need
The dog still need drops.
if people need to let their mind
Decompress.
take a moment.
Just
This
a
would be
question
good.
maybe.
Wouldn't hurt.
Like,
Take
what
a
if before the written word, when we think about people before Noah or after Noah, all they knew would have been this oral story from Aleph Tav, repeating the Aleph Tav, saying it, and knowing this story because it's written in the stars also.
Right. So, we were kind of discussing in Psalm 119 that before David, there's no record that I've ever heard of that anybody ever contemplated words. Now, maybe somebody did, but I don't know. Before David, at least as far as the Torah goes, Moshe wrote it in dictation. But we're not told Moses ever studied the words, just that he was responsible as the lawgiver to make sure everybody knew what the words were. The kings were supposed to write down a copy of the Torah, but yet before David, the only king was Saul, and Saul was acting nuts like he didn't do that. He must not have done it because he didn't take it to heart. Was David the first king to sit down there and write a copy of the Torah? What about the judges? No. Everybody did which was right in their own eyes. So they processed for themselves and didn't quite live up to snuff, right? So they went stupid. The enemies came in, and Yahweh sent a judge, a rescuer, to pull them back. Before the judges with Moses, before Moses, there was no written Torah. The Levites were supposed to teach the Torah once every 7 years to a bunch of illiterate people that didn't have their own Torah scroll. Who would have ever sat down and contemplated words? Oh, only David. Where did he come up with the idea to do this? So we were talking about perhaps Yahweh designed the heart of David, like he said he formed Jeremiah in the womb. Perhaps Yahweh formed David to have a heart, to say, what about those words? And even David's son Solomon had some of the genetic things say he pondered words, he pondered poetry and writing, and perhaps he even brought the alphabet into a unified form, because before that there was various versions of paleo-shaped letters. And even the Canaanites were speaking Hebraic, Paleo-Hebrew, so it's not just the Hebrews, which means that I believe it was quite probably, or it was, the language used before the Tower of Babel. So it was a common language. The Hebrews didn't have a hold on that they were the only ones with this language. So, but did anybody else contemplate what it meant? The only person we have on record is David, as far as I know. Why David? Because Yahweh chose that time, like the branch on the menorah, and now it's time for this to happen? Okay. So then we look at Psalm 119, and Alfonso has done this study. You want to describe the study that you're doing?
So we were doing the, I don't know if you're aware, but you get to Psalm 119, you have every 8 verses is another Hebrew letter. And if you have English, you don't see it.
Now, have you ever heard this before? Do you know what he's talking about? Have you ever seen this in the text?
I've heard it, I haven't seen it in the actual Hebrew.
Okay, what do you got here?
It's the complete Jewish Bible,
Does it,
Okay,
does
so
it
it
show
does
you-
actually have an Aleph in the beginning, though.
Does it? Let's see, where?
up here.
It separates it.
Okay, now,
See, some translations won't do that.
if you look at these 8 verses under Aleph,
Yep.
do you recognize any reason why he says Aleph here?
Well, it's very focused
It's focused?
on Yahweh.
Okay, if you look to the next page,
The bet section.
do you see any reason why he called any of those things Bet instead of Aleph? Aleph was focused on Yahweh. Isn't Bet focused on Yahweh too?
Yeah, seems to be.
Seems to be. So the fact that it's focused on Yahweh doesn't distinguish whether it should be in the Aleph section or the Bet section.
Not at first glance.
Not at first glance. Okay, so then it goes back to what Alfonso's looking at.
Yeah, so what we're doing is, if you actually get to the Hebrew, like the Aleph section, which is 8 verses, the first 8 verses, every word and every verse begins with the letter Aleph,
Just the first word of the verse.
just the first word.
All right.
But you'll never see that in English. It
But you
doesn't
don't
start
see
with the
it in
letter A.
No.
And when you get to Bet, it's the same thing. All 8 verses start with the letter Bet.
Okay.
And then it continues all the way through Psalm 119 with all 22 letters.
Wow.
So if
So you have
study,
22 sections of 8.
if you study Psalm 119 in English or Greek, it blows the whole pattern. You'll never see it because it doesn't track. It's like somebody saying, here, let me describe to you Ohio, but you're standing in Nevada and they're pointing at the hills and mountains of Nevada and say, what does this got to do with Ohio? Well, nothing. But I'm describing you the environment. Yeah, but the environment we want to talk about is Ohio, not Nevada. Sorry, we're in Nevada. It's like, English is not Hebrew. Okay, so what were you looking at then?
So then, one thing we were doing was just breaking down the each section. So the Aleph section, generally, what does it mean? So I have a little type out with a little description for each section and what a general meaning of the whole section is. But then right before you came, we were going a little bit deeper, trying to say, okay, is there a almost like a hidden message? Is there something in there that helps decipher what all this means?
Based on verse 18. You want to read verse 18?
Yep.
It's in the Gimel section.
Open my eyes so that I will see wonders from your Torah.
What does that mean? What is he asking for?
Wisdom to discern the word.
Discern
To
what word?
rightly the Torah.
Well, what is actually the Torah? What's written in the Torah?
The laws, the mitzvot,
Okay, such as,
also the creation story.
okay, here's the creation story. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He said, let there be light, separated water from water. He spoke plant life. He put the sun, moon, and stars. What mysteries is David asking to see? Isn't that pretty obvious what it is? Gimel, just as a reference, Gimel, it means camel, but it also means to rise up. Now, as you were mentioning something, I have this picture in my mind of a submarine underwater. If a submarine wants to see something other than what's underwater, it has to raise up this periscope so it can look around to a whole different environment. David is asking, will you please allow me to have this periscope that gets out of my realm into some other realm so I can see the other reality which is imperceptible from my own? Because all I can see is the surface narrative. But he has a hunch. There's something else going on here. Why didn't the guy before David ask this question? Well, as we just said, I don't know if there's any record of anybody ever having the Torah available. Moshe wrote one copy. Moshe wrote apparently another copy that he gave to the 12 princes. And whether that means Moshe hand-scribed 12 copies, when is he going to do it? Moshe was sitting there solving the legal problems of so many people that Yithro's father-in-law says, you're going to die with fatigue. Get some other people. Oh, okay, so that's where they invented the Sanhedrin and, right, leaders over tens and fifties and hundreds and thousands. And so Moses was just dogged with work already. You think he's going to sit here and ponder the words? Well, maybe he did, but what I'm saying is there's no record other than David. So David is asking to see something that no one has ever seen before, and it has nothing to do with the surface text. It's underneath.
And another thing we were looking at was if you break down each section, I mean, we have a lot of understanding of what each letter means based on the pictograph and all this research. But if you read each section, nothing specifically comes out and says, this sounds just like Aleph. So you sit there and you go, why did you choose these words for the Aleph section? Because it really doesn't specifically say Aleph versus Bet. I mean, most of the sections sound pretty much similar. So it's like, well, what's really going on here? Why is this one section Bet? Maybe there's a, maybe there's a riddle, some type of poetry in there that he hid something. So that's what we're looking at.
So, if then, just to kind of cut to the chase, we elaborated a little bit more, but just to bring you up where we were at, if you were to look at the 8 words that start with an Aleph, which is the first word of each of 8 sentences, what you have is Ashri, Aleph, Shin, Resh, Yod, and that is repeated twice. Aleph, Shin, Resh, Yod. Now the word Asher literally means straight, but it also means who. It also means that, or which, or who, or that which. It also means blessed, happy, praiseworthy, valid, validate, authenticate, confirm. So my study is to put all those things together and say, what does that word mean? So how would you take everything I just said, maybe it didn't stick, but how would you take all those words I just said and tell me what that word means? That's repeated twice.
Jump off the cliff.
I'd give you a big dictionary.
Just give it a shot. And again, this isn't wrong or right. This isn't like I'm going to give you a check and you're going to have to go stand in the corner with your nose in that. But this is just say, what do you think? What do you get out of this?
Authority comes through.
Valid, authenticate, corroborate. Okay, there's a sense of authority.
Yeah.
Praiseworthy. Somebody will be lifted up into a position of honor if they do this.
Divine authority.
Some sort of divine authority, right? So here you have an Aleph, which speaks of the infinite one, or the divinity, and here you have the word Sar, which is the word for prince, which is one who is authorized or one who is in authority. So the praiseworthy man is one who has at his hand received by the hand of the Almighty to be the trustworthy authority, as if, amen, I found him to be with fidelity, with virtue, with integrity. I know I can trust him. Mm-hmm. He's been proven to be valid. If you get a contractor's license, the reason why the state says just hire a guy with a contractor's license is because the state has tested him, has proved his legal standing is pretty much vouched, as much as they can. They've vouched for the fact that this guy won't rip off the homeowner if he's got a license. And if he does, they've got the right to smack him down hard. So having a contractor's license is ashri.
Now, what would the difference between that word and amen be? Maybe minus the authority, but with the integrity and fidelity?
Sure, yeah, the
Would that
two
be
are
the
very
way to
similar.
describe it?
If you wrote the word amen, Aleph, Mem, Nun, you'll notice that Mem, Nun is these two letters, taking it to heart. Aleph is I will, but Am is the word for mother. What's a mother? Mother is somebody who's taken the seed to her innermost parts and is now nurturing them. So someone who is going to be found praiseworthy as a prince that can be trusted to implement the instructions is one who has already taken them to heart and nurtured them and finessed them as an expert to produce the best possible product. So they are related. But if we're just talking about what David wrote in Psalms 119, the Aleph section, it says, Ashri, Ashri. It's calling, like going out with the shofar and saying, can I have your attention, please? Does anybody want to get blessed? Would anybody like to be authorized as a prince in the kingdom of Yahweh? Now the word sar also means poet and singer.
Oh.
So how would you compare or find the lowest common denominator between a prince, a poet, and a singer? But it also means bracelet chain. What has a bracelet chain got to do with a poet, a singer, and a prince? How would you wrap those together with this word?
I'm going to stop for a second and start it up again.